Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Microsoft Data and AI South Florida user group. My name is Adriano, your host, and today we have another fantastic presentation where we are going to be talking about SQL Server, Azure Arc, and Azure SQL DB. If you're new to the channel, remember to like, subscribe, and drop a comment. Now, if you have a question during the presentation, use the live chat to enter your questions. As a matter of fact, right now, let us know, where are you located? Use the live chat, enter your location, and during the presentation, remember, use the live chat to enter your questions. And after the presentation, use the comment section to enter any questions you have. We're going to reach out to the presenter, which, as a reminder, today we'll be talking about Azure Arc for SQL Server with Deepthi Goguri. She's an amazing presenter, and she's also a co-organizer of the Microsoft Data and AI South Florida user group. She's also in Women in Technology and many other great efforts out there. Now, without further ado, let's bring in Deepthi. Hello,
Hey
Deepthi, and
Adriano, how are
hello,
you?
Deepthi. Well, thank you. And how are you?
I'm doing good. I'm doing
Excellent,
good.
and excellent, and thanks for joining us for another amazing presentation.
Thank you for having me.
All right, and can you tell us a bit about you?
Yeah, so myself, I'm Deepthi Goguri. I'm a database administrator and I have about more than 10 years of experience as a DBA. And I'm a Microsoft Data Platform MVP. And I am also a co-organizer, proud co-organizer of this user group, Microsoft Data and AI South Florida user group. And I also do co-organize couple of other user groups as well, which I will be sharing with you in the introductory slide.
All right, as we talk about an introduction, can you tell us just a little bit what are we covering today?
So we are going to cover about the Azure Arc for SQL Server. Like if you are not familiar with Azure Arc, this will be an introductory session about Azure, what Azure Arc can do and how you can pull all your on-prem SQL servers into Azure portal and manage them on the Azure portal. And also we are going to see how how Azure Arc can be like Azure Arc is a prerequisite to install the Azure Active Directory on the SQL, like Azure Active Directory on SQL Server 2022. So I had a really hard time of installing Azure Active Directory on SQL Server 2022. So as this is a prerequisite, like Azure Arc is a prerequisite, I thought I would put things together to show you how to do it.
Oh, amazing. So we are going to get first-hand account, tales from the fields here by Deepthi on the struggles, challenges, and solutions she came about on integrating this hybrid, right? So Azure SQL DB, SQL Server, and bringing it all together. And before we get started here with you, Deepthi, we have Kitya Miyu. I hope I'm pronouncing here right. And he's from Manchester, UK. Thank you for attending with us here. And
Awesome. Thank you for joining.
yeah, and where are you located at, Deepthi?
I am located in Kentucky. So the capital city of Kentucky is Frankfurt. So I'm I'm joining this call from Frankfurt, Kentucky. Yeah.
All right. All right then. So without further ado, are you ready?
Yes.
Excellent. Then it is all you, Deepthi. Thank you very much. And
Thank
your
you
slide
so
is
much. Thank you so much, Adriano, and thank you so much, everyone, for taking your time today evening in joining to learn something new about Azure Arc. This topic is fairly new to me as well, but I thought like putting this presentation together will also help other people. So here I am today. And a little bit about myself. Like I said, like I'm a database administrator having about like 10 plus years of experience as a DBA and all the things. I do not want to talk much about all the other things, but if you would like to contact me, Twitter and LinkedIn is the best place to contact me. And my Twitter handle is right there at DBA Nuggets, and LinkedIn, type by my name, Deepthi Goguri, to connect to me. It will be an honor to get in touch with you. And if you are if you are a, like blog readers, dbanuggets.com is my website where I have written multiple series of blog posts regarding the same topic, Azure Arc. So you can go ahead and look into my website to learn more. So as an overview, we are going to see what Azure Arc is, what are the benefits of Azure Arc, and how to connect your on-prem SQL servers or any other on-premises, any other servers that you have, and how to connect to the Azure, like how to pull those servers into Azure portal using Azure Arc services. And also, I would also like to show you how to install the Azure Active Directory, how to enable the Azure Active Directory authentication for your SQL Server. So we are specifically talking about this specific um, like authentication. Azure Active Directory is only available for SQL Server 2022. So we are going to talk about this. Now you might be thinking like, why are we bringing Azure Active Directory into this session, right? But the thing was like Azure Arc services are the prerequisite to enable Azure Active Directory authentication. And I really had hard time of like installing. So I thought like people will be really beneficial. It is really beneficial for the audience to go through the step by step of how to install. Um, so I have put that thing here as well. So what is Azure Arc enabled SQL Server, right? um, this is like a service where if you have multiple other like services, like any on-prem servers, not only the SQL server but also any other like AWS or the any other like database engines out there, you can actually use the Azure Arc to pull them into the Azure portal where you can actually manage the inventory all in once. Because like if you have a large data estate and your servers are everywhere, it is very hard and tedious. And if you are hybrid model, right, if half of the servers are on prem and the half of the servers are in Asia, it gets really harder to manage as you are adding more and more servers to your estate. So having the Azure Arc enable enable services will actually pull all of those servers, and it will give a very good centralized location for you to go ahead and manage the inventory. Like not only the way you can look at it, but you can also see the details of each and every server that you have. And the other benefit that you can have is you can use Azure Resource Graph Explorer to explore your estate, like data estate, like your servers, how many servers you have, what are the, you can run certain queries, the basic queries to pull up like what version of SQL servers do I have and what is the compatibility level of my databases, those sort of like what version and what edition do you have. You can pull all of that information by actually using this graph explorer. That's the use of graph explorer. And also additionally, there should be some advancements and there should be some advantages as you pull your your inventory information into the Azure, right? As you pull your on-prem SQL Server information into the Azure portal by using the Azure Arc. The other benefit is best practice assessment. You can use the Microsoft Defender for Cloud as well. And you can also see the any best practices that you can see, like Microsoft will analyze your databases and it will provide you with the best practices. If you're not um, following the like the some of these practices that the Azure actually share with us with the entire databases, right? These are the best practices. So if you are missing any of those best practices, those will be shown, and you can take a look at it and then decide if you want to take the make the changes or not. But with the Microsoft Defender for Cloud, you can see if there are any um, uh, vulnerability issues going on. Like if anybody is trying to enter into your database, you can get the alerts, you can set up those alerts, which you do not have that advantage when you're having your databases on-prem alone without having the Azure Arc enabled, right? So that is another benefit, the Microsoft best practices as well as the Defender for Cloud. These are the two advantages that you can have when you pull your databases into the Azure. So one of the advantages, like if you see, I'm zooming it out. Like as I told you, this is the inventory, right? By pulling in, these are the graph queries, like that I try to pull in the information. After you enable the Azure Arc, you can see the first query pulled in. What are the compatibility modes of my databases, and what are the versions? What kind of versions do I have? SQL Server 2016, 2012, and 2008, and also the compatibility level and the distribution of like the databases, the edition distribution as well. This is just an example I took from Microsoft website, how the inventory dashboard will actually look like. Let's see a little bit of architecture, like how the like what are the things that are needed to enable the Azure Arc, right? There are three main agents that are required to enable the Azure Arc on your SQL Server. So the first thing is Azure Connected Machine Agent. This agent will help manage the Windows and the Linux machines. So to register, first we need to register the machine itself wherever SQL servers are hosted. So it can be the Windows machines or it can be the Linux machines, and it can also be hosted outside of the Azure, right? So the second one is the Azure extension for SQL Server. So um, after you install the first one, Azure Connected Machine Agent, your all your Windows machines or the Linux machines will be shown up in the portal. But on the top of it, you need to install the Azure extension for SQL Server. That's when your SQL servers will be shown in the portal. And the third one is Azure Monitoring Agent. This monitoring agent is not required just to enable the Azure Arc. But if you wanted to take the advantage of the best practices and use the Microsoft Defender for Cloud, then you need to have this my Azure monitoring agent that needs to be installed. And the collected information, like once you enable this, the data will be collected once you enable the Microsoft Defender, right? That data can be collected in a log analytical workspace. You can create a new workspace and you can save that log in that workspace. So as a diagram, Azure Arc enabled SQL Server architectures looks like this. So at the bottom of the screen, you see you have like different SQL instances, on-prem SQL instances. So like we discussed, first we need to install the Azure Connected Machine Agent to register the machines itself, the Windows or the Linux machines. And then you need to, on the top of it, you need to install the Azure extension for SQL Server, where your SQL servers will be shown up along with all the databases inside the SQL Server. And Azure Monitoring Agent, specifically that is not required, but then to get those to take the advantage of the Defender for cloud, you have to install Azure Monitoring Agent, and that event log can be saved in the workspace. So what are the prerequisites? Like there are a couple of prerequisites that you are needed to install the Azure Arc. One is you need to have the active subscription, which is, yeah, that is needed, right? We are using the Azure portal. So active subscription is needed, and then you need to verify Arc connected machine agent network requirements. So to register the machine itself, the Windows um, or the Linux machine itself first, you need to have some of the network requirements. You can go ahead and look into the requirements by clicking on that, but we need to have certain outbound rules on each server, and for the port 1433 that needs to be enabled, and um, and also you need to register two resource providers. These are the prerequisites, right? So Microsoft Azure Data, Azure Arc Data, and Hybrid Compute. These are the two main resource providers that you need to install with by using the Azure portal. Now, where do you find these, right? After opening up the Azure portal, if you have the subscription, go to the subscription itself. And on the left side pane, here I'm using Microsoft Azure sponsorship subscription. If you see on the left side underneath the settings, the highlighted resource providers, where you see, click on that and search for those, both of those, um, these Azure Arc Data and Hybrid Compute over there. You'll find it, and then just register them. On the top of it, you find register, just register them. And then there are certain permissions that are needed for the service principal that that is being used to install the Azure Arc, right? So that service principal needs to have all of these specific permissions. It needs to have the read permission on the subscription itself, and the on the Azure resource group itself, and couple of the other permissions that are required. Like you can actually install the Azure Arc manually one by one. But if you wanted to install on multiple, um, if you want to pull up multiple on-prem servers into the by using the Azure Arc into Azure, then you can do it at scale. So both of them are possible. So for the manual installation, administrator permissions on the machine itself is required. And for if you wanted to do at scale, then there are a couple of more permissions are required, like you are seeing here, user access administrator role. I'm going to show that in the screenshots coming slides, but there are certain policy requirements like resource policy, contributor role that is also required. So in this particular session, we are going to talk about SQL Server 2022, and we are trying to connect the SQL Server 2022 to Azure Arc enabled SQL Server. So you can do this while you are installing SQL Server 2022. We have in the graphical user interface, like when you are installing, right, the setup files, using the setup files, underneath the feature selection, there is additional shared feature known as SQL Server extension for Azure. You can simply click that button to install the Azure Arc automatically for you. But what happened when I did this, right? When I did this on my computer, it didn't allow me. Like it throwed me a couple of errors, even though when I gave all the information. So if you see here, Azure extension for SQL Server, once I selected that feature selection, it asked me to provide all the details here, like what is a principal ID, service principal ID, what is the secret for for the Azure service principal, and subscription ID, and all the resource group. You need to specify the specific resource group and specific subscription ID, region, tenant ID, everything I have put was perfect. And I have tried it multiple times, but even though when I did, it throwed me an error. So there are the validation errors. It asked me to review and then provide the valid parameters, though I provided the valid parameters. So I thought, like, what is the other way to do it, right? If it is not working from the graphical user interface while you are setting up the SQL Server, you have the additional, you can also do that through installation. So manual installation. So to do that, go to the Azure portal and search Azure Arc SQL. So I completed my installation of SQL Server 2022 by doing the setup files. I did not choose that Azure Arc enabled SQL Server. I just unticked that and then I installed the SQL Server. And then I came to the portal, Azure portal, and I searched Azure Arc SQL and click on the SQL Server Azure Arc there. And then I wanted to go ahead and connect SQL Server to Azure Arc. Click on Connect Servers, and then here it will show you step by step what to do here. So there are a couple of prerequisites that we have seen in our slides that you need to have, like you need to have the virtual or the physical machine using SQL Server, a user account with permissions that we have discussed, that service principal needs to have the permissions, and there are a couple of other PowerShell requirements as well. And click on next, and it will ask you for the, generally whenever you want to install some um, resources onto the, into the portal, like into the Azure, it will ask you the basic details we need to provide, like for example, what is your subscription ID, what is the resource group, and then where do you want to place this particular resource, which is a region, and then what is the operating system, and all the sort of things, right? And it will ask you for the license type. So I installed SQL Server 2022 Enterprise Edition. So I have clicked on the second option. And then as you click next, it will ask you if you want to choose any tags. So these tags are really beneficial, especially for the Azure Arc. Like if you are using any specific SQL Server for specific applications, you can actually name the application and then tag it to that application name, so that at the end, like when you wanted to see how much of like as you go into the details of like your resources and the SQL Server, so you can find it easily by using these tags. Click on next. And then as you click on next, it will actually ask you to download the copy of the following script. It will generate a script for you where you can run this particular script. You can copy directly, and then you can run the script on the Windows machine where you wanted to install the Azure Arc. So that Windows machine or the Linux machine where your SQL Server is hosted, right? So copy that script, and then you can hit download or you can just copy, and then it will provide you the specific how do you have to run the script in the second step. Um, so what I did was like I copied this entire script. So the PowerShell script you download will be unsigned. So basically, you need to provide, like you need that when you copy that and when you try to run using PowerShell, it will say like this particular user is unsigned. So you need to sign that user to run that particular PowerShell script. So um, basically, you have to run this particular small code here, get execution policy, scope current user before running that script, because that particular user will have the ability to run that PowerShell script that you download. So first you need to run this, which will give the permissions to for the current user to run that script. And then I just pasted here. If you see, I just pasted and I hit enter. And as you see, the last few lines, it will say like the authentication was successful, and then um, onboarding SQL Server to Azure Arc. It will take few minutes, and it will give you the log location where you can go ahead and see. And it is also registering the resource provider for the Azure Arc data to the subscription, and it will provide you the subscription details. If you see here, and then if you observe here, it the very next lines, as you hit enter to that script, it will also say like onboarding SQL Server, which we have seen in the previous slide, and it is installing the Azure Arc machine agent. Do you remember that is the first step where it will register um, the machine itself, the Windows machine or the Linux machine, and then it will install Azure Connected Machine Agent, and then Azure Arc resource. It is also registering the current machine now, and it will also install the last step is install Azure extension for SQL Server, and it will take more than like 5 minutes or so. And once it is installed, if you see here, you can go to the Azure portal and search for the Azure Arc. And if you see here, once you select the Azure Arc, it will take you to the Azure Arc SQL servers where your um, the Windows machine is installed. Where the first one is the Windows machine itself, desktop SV5TG DG6, that is the Windows machine itself. And the second one is the SQL Server. If you see, I have the SQL 2022 on the top of it. That's my instance name. So both of them will be shown. And as I click on the SQL Server instance, it will clearly show me all the databases that are being on that particular instance. Underneath the database management, you can click on databases and you can see the list of the databases that I have. And after I click on one of the databases, I can clearly see what is um, all the details of that particular database. The second one that I would like to see is connected to Azure Active Directory for the SQL Server 2022. Um, the specific reason why I have to put this one on the slide is like we need to have the prerequisite Azure Arc enabled for us to connect the Azure Active Directory after installing SQL Server 2022. It is not a small and straightforward step to enable the Azure Active Directory. There are like several steps that you need to follow, and if you skip one of these steps, it will you need to start over all over again. So I made a mistake. I followed the Microsoft Docs. Microsoft Docs is amazing. They have a perfect documentation, but I thought like one or two steps might not be needed because they seem to be small, and I skipped them and it didn't work. So I had to do it all over again. So I thought like because it is interlinked with Azure Arc, I thought like putting this together will actually help you. So SQL Server should be connected to Azure Cloud through Azure Arc first before using Azure Active Directory. And there are a couple of prerequisites that we need to use. So first we need to create, if we are doing this manually, right? We can actually check with Azure, like tell Microsoft to take care of this automatically, or we can do it by ourselves. So let's do it manually first and then use the automated next. So we need to create a certificate first and then the place that certificate into the key vault. And then if you are if you are doing it, there will be also an application registered, Azure Active Directory application registered, and we can actually help with taking the help of Microsoft. We can do it automatically, like that application can be built automatically, or we can manually build that application. So first step is to um, set up the Azure Active Directory admin. So first we need to have someone as an administrator to do this. So I am using my credentials like Deepthi, my account to be the Azure Active Directory admin, and that account needs to have permissions, the contributor role for the key vault, because we are going to create a certificate and place that certificate in the key vault. So it needs to have a contributor role to the key vault because it will be placed in the key vault, right? And for the SQL Server as well as from the Azure Arc. So um, so what I'm doing when you're seeing in the first screenshot is that um, the first one, SQL Server 2022 KV is key vault. So I'm giving my account Deepthi at dbanuggets.com as a key vault contributor over there. And the second one is the SQL Server Azure Arc itself. As you know, the Azure Arc needs to be first enabled to do this step. So I'll go to the SQL Server Azure Arc. There I will find my SQL Server, and also I will give the contributor role underneath the access control, right underneath the SQL Server Azure Arc. So those are the two permissions needed for that credential. Okay, let me see this. The next one is to give the access policies underneath the key vault. So once you open up the key vault, we have created this key vault, and underneath the access policies, that particular account needs to have several permissions that you are seeing on the screen. We need to give the secret permissions and the certificate permissions. You need to just click on these things that you are seeing on the screen, and then um, some of the additional permissions you are seeing on the keyboard. All these permissions are needed, and then you need to click next, and then there the service principal name, you can see Deepthi, my account, and I'm clicking on save. I'm giving my credential the permissions, all of these permissions, and then um, we need to give the Azure Active Directory admin setup now. We have given the prerequisite permissions. Now that those prerequisite permissions are for the key vault, now I will go ahead and set up my account um, as the Azure Active Directory. So I need to go ahead and click search for the SQL Server Azure Arc, and there click on SQL Server Azure Arc, and there I will go ahead and click on the Azure Active Directory left side my screen. There, I will go ahead and give my account, deepthi@dbanuggets.com, the Active Directory admin permissions. But there, before doing that, we need to click on like SQL Server's service certificate, whether you wanted to do service managed cert or the customer managed cert. First, we are going to do it automatically, meaning like service managed cert, meaning like Microsoft service will be automatically creating this certificate for you. And then the second one is SQL Server app registration. If you see here, the first one is the SQL Server service certificate. We are clicking on the service managed cert. Microsoft will take care of creating the certificate, as well as um, SQL Server app registration, where Microsoft will also create an app registration automatically for you. So now what you have to do is you need to just select the key vault. From here, it will ask like key vault, select the key vault. So click on change key vault over there, and then click on the SQL Server right side your screen. If you see, that's my key vault that we have given the Deepthi at dbanuggets.com the permissions to as a contributor, right, to that key vault. So click on that key vault and then click on select, where we select the key vault as well, where this certificate needs to be stored. And so once we do this, right, once we select this, and then we will click on set as admin on the top of the screen. If you see here, set as admin, we will give that to set the admin. So what we once we do this, what will happen behind the scenes, right? Let's see what will happen behind the scenes. So the certificate is created in the key vault. Like the certificate will be created and it will be saved inside the key vault in this particular format. The host name, which is the Windows machine name, dash instance name, and a unique number, right? That will be automatically be created. And then the Azure AD application will be also created in the format of like host name, instance name, and as well as a unique number as shown below. Like if you see below, um, the AD application name, that is how it will look like, and the application ID and the object ID will be given, and the necessary permissions will also be granted to this application automatically. Once the application is built, that service account will also be having the, it will also be given the necessary permissions onto this application. So the certificate is created automatically, but it is not managed and rotated by Microsoft. It can be created automatically. So it is up to the customer to manage these certificates. You need to go to the key vault, and then you need to manage those certificates, uh, rotate the certificate. So install Azure Active Directory to connect to the SQL Server. So these are the steps that we have create. So, but we have given the Microsoft the ability to do that for us automatically. But if we want to do it manually, right, these are the steps. Like you need to first create and register an Azure Active Directory application, and then grant permissions to the Azure Active Directory application to the account, right? And then create and assign the certificate, right? And then we need to place that certificate in the key vault, configure the Azure Active Directory authentication to SQL Server through Azure portal again. And then later, once we are set up, then go ahead and create logins and users by connecting to your SQL Server. You can use SSMS Studio to connect to the SQL Server, but now you can create the Azure Active Directory logins. And also you can connect with the supported authentication mode method. You can use a multi-factor authentication as well. Like once you started using the Azure Active Directory logins, it will ask you to um, it will ask you for the multi-factor authentication, where you can provide the details and then use the SSMS to connect to your SQL Server. So how are we going to do it manually, right? So we need to first create and register the Azure Active Directory application. Go ahead and search in the search bar of the Azure portal, Azure Active Directory. Click on it, where you need to first do the application registration. Click on the application registration after choosing the Azure Active Directory. Click on new registration. Again, we are doing it manually, right? So creating the application, registering an application is easy. Give it a name and how you wanted to, the supported account types. So account in this organizational directory only, and there are a couple of other multi-tenant, and then any Azure Active Directory multi-tenant. This is a single tenant which I wanted to use. So I used accounts in the organizational directory only, and then hit on register. Very simple, two steps. After you creating, now what we have to do is we need to give the permissions onto that application, right? So I went to that application registration, and on the left side pane underneath the manage, click on API permissions. And here we need to be very careful while giving these permissions, because we don't want to miss any of the permissions. So click on Microsoft APIs. There you will find the Microsoft Graph. Click on Microsoft Graph, and underneath the Microsoft Graph, there are two things: delegated permissions and application permissions. Click on application permissions, where you request for the API permissions here. Search for the directory dot read all permissions. You need to type in there to find that permissions and click on that, and then hit add permissions over there. Once you do that, right, um, again you need to go again, click on API permissions underneath the app registration, right? The SQL Server CTP1 is the application name, right? The application name that we have registered. So click on API and then click on add permissions again, and then this time instead of using the application permissions, click on delegated permissions, and this is underneath the Microsoft Graph. Click on that, and here you need to give all of these listed permissions here. You need to search. Again, we have a documentation, Microsoft documentation to do this, but these are all 4 permissions. You do not want to skip any of those. So click on all of them and give them the permissions. And then as we have given the permissions, now you go back to the key vault now. The key vault SQL Server 2022 KV is the key vault. And then underneath the left side pane, underneath the objects, go to the certificate. And now we need to create the certificate. What we have done is we have registered an application. We have given the necessary permissions to that application. Now we are coming to the key vault where we will create a certificate and save that certificate in the key vault. So to create the certificate, you need to provide these minimum permission, minimum name, like certification name, um, and then the subject is automatically populated over there, and validity period in months, you can change that, and then um, click on create, will create the certificate for you. And then once the certificate is created with a code, like if you see the certificate, it have a number on the top of it. So once you create the certificate, you can go ahead and download that certificate. Download in CER format, you can download that, or you can download in PEM format. But here I am downloading it in CER format. And if you see here, um, you need to go to the application registration again. After you have downloaded the certificate from the key vault, you'll go to the application registration and you need to link this application as well as the certificate together. So you need to go to the application registration that we just registered. Underneath the left blade, manage, go to the certificates and secret, and you need to upload the certificate that you just downloaded. And this we are doing underneath the application registration. And underneath the upload certificate, as you upload from the folder, right, it will automatically populate the certificate ID over there. And then click on add. And then once you add it, um, I think this is kind of the permissions that we have given in the previous when we have registered the app automatically. Those are the same permissions you need to give back again. Go to the key vault again, access policies, and give these necessary secret permissions and certificate permissions again to that account. Click on next. And then here in the principal, what you choose, you are doing this manually, right? Underneath the principal, you are going to search for the computer itself, the Windows computer itself. Once you do that, click on next. And this is the computer where your SQL Server 2022 is hosted. So you are going to give that computer name, and then you can see the third step is to configure Azure Active Directory authentication for SQL Server by creating the customer managed cert. Now, what you have to do is like um, you need to go to the Azure Arc, because this is a prerequisite, right? Azure, you need to Azure Arc the SQL Server before activating the Active Directory for the SQL Server. So you need to go to the Azure Arc because we are actually pulling this data on the portal, right? Azure portal. So go to the SQL Server Azure Arc. You will find your SQL Server 2022 here because we registered already. Then underneath the settings plate, go to the Azure Active Directory. Now here, what you wanted to do is you need to choose that certificate and the application registration that you just registered, right? You need to link that to your SQL Server here. So click on your certificate type, which is customer managed cert, because we built that. And certificate, you need to change the certificate, like you need to upload that certificate which you just created, like, and the app registration as well. You need to click on that and then choose the application that you just registered. And then if you see here the key vault certificate, and once you click on the certificate, once you click on down button, it will automatically show you what you have um, what you have saved inside the keyword. So you can choose the certificate, and once you choose the certificate, the version will be automatically populated. Click on select. That's where we have selected the certificate. Now we are going to select the app registered. So click on change app registration underneath the customer manage application registration. And you remember that we have hooked the on the SQL Server 2022. You can see the name. It will have the computer name and then the instance name. So click on the application registration that you just registered. Click on that and hit select. And now you are going to give the same account, deepthi@dbnuggets.com, um, the set admin permissions. Click on save. And again, here something to be remembered. Once you hit on save, it's not like the regular process where you hit on save and it is done immediately. It will take several minutes here. At this point of time, do not lose your hope. Do not refresh the page. It will take some time to set that account as a admin. And behind the scenes, all the process needs to have. So be patient here, so that that account will have the admin privileges right now onto the Azure Active Directory. So once the process is completed, you'll see the process completed successfully on the portal. Now you'll go back to your local computer where you can connect to the SQL Server, SQL Server 2022, which is an on-prem SQL Server, but we have used Azure Arc, and then we installed Azure Active Directory on the top of it. So now I can go ahead and connect to the SQL Server by using the Azure Active Directory account, which is deepthi@dbnuggets.com. So I have connected to it and I have clearly seen that login over there. But then we need to actually give the sysadmin privileges onto this particular machine. So if you see, give the alter server role, sysadmin permission, and then add this member, deepthi@dbnuggets.com. That way it will have the sysadmin privileges on the SQL Server 2022. Now, as it is a sysadmin, we can go ahead and add more logins by using the same Azure Active Directory logins. You can create the login from the external provider, that is the T-SQL code you use to create the logins. You can also create the Azure Active Directory group itself by using create login group name from external provider, or you can also give the Azure Active Directory application name, create login app name from external provider. This way you can actually create the logins and connect by using the support authentication method. Instead of using the Windows authentication, now we are using the Azure Active Directory authentication, but still I'm using my local SSMS to connect to the SQL Server 2022 because we installed Azure Active Directory. So here I'm using the authentication type Azure Active Directory with the multi-factor authentication, and I'm giving my user ID deepthi@dbnuggets.com. Once I hit on connect, it will ask you for the multi-factor authentication. You'll give those details from the authenticator app by using the authenticator app, and you are finally connected to the SQL Server 2022 on-prem SQL Server 2022, but by using the Azure Active Directory um, account, right? And you can see all the databases and everything. So what we have learned so far is we have seen like the basics of Azure Arc and how once we install the Azure Arc, we can see all of the servers, not only the SQL Server, but the other SQL engine providers um, SQL engine providers like Amazon. You can also pull in those and use the Azure portal to look at your directory and look at your inventory. And um, you can use the best practices assessment as well as the Defender for Cloud on the top of it by taking the advantage of Azure Arc. And Azure Arc services is the prerequisite to install the Azure Active Directory. And there are several steps where you can do Azure Active Directory authentication to enable it. We have seen that as well. And these are the resources where you can, uh, these are a couple of resources. And I would like to show one more thing here. I think I have written another slides, couple of other learnings that I did. No, I think that's it. Did I missed anything? Just give me a minute, please. I will go to my downloads. Just download it. I think I have it somewhere where I have a couple of additional details. I think no. I think those are the only. I thought I have some additional step, but I think those are the only ones, and these are the references that I actually followed. Um, and then I have an extension to have the similar details, all of this in my blog post, as well as a blog series where I have gone through step by step of how to do this. You can also see my website to go ahead and look into like how to install Azure Active Directory on your SQL Server 2022. And you can actually pull in by using the Azure Arc. You can actually pull in your 2008 servers into the Azure portal as well. So I would like to thank you on that note, and I hope you learned something new today. If you are really familiar with Azure Arc already, you might have learned something about Azure Active Directory today. And I would like to thank each one of you for attending this session. And I would like to thank Adriano for giving me this great opportunity to present to our own user group. Thank you.
Thank you very much as well, Deepthi. Really appreciate an amazing presentation here, guiding us on a step-by-step
Mhm.
set of instructions on installing, configuring, managing Azure Arc enabled data services to work with SQL Server, Azure SQL, and Microsoft Entra ID, meaning Azure, also known as, or formerly known as Azure
Azure
Active
Active Directory.
Directory.
Right.
So a lot of great information. I know it's, as I said, an overwhelming amount of information. So folks, do not hesitate. First of all, if you get a question, enter it in the live chat right now. If you're watching this presentation after its completion, use the comment section and remember to like, subscribe, and share. So, Deepthi, as well, thank you very much for making the time to be here with us. And before you go, we do have a few questions here. So, hang on a second. Okay. All right. Let's take a look at over here. All right. First of all, welcome and thank you very much, Demu, for your question. So the question is, does it work on-premise SQL Server analysis services as well?
SQL Server analysis services. I'm not really sure. I'm I'm not really sure if we can do that. Let me search very quick if we can do that.
Yes, great question there, Demu, on the topic. So remember, we're highlighting, but Deepthi did a great job here in showing about the SQL Server databases and covering that hybrid mode, right? That infrastructure, whether in the cloud, on premises, the ability to manage and integrate all of that. As were you able to find anything so far, Deepthi?
Um, no.
So,
I
all
think
right.
this is like a solution is for the hybrid or and multi-cloud management. Um, but I'm not really sure if we can bring the analysis services into it.
All
I'm
right.
not finding anything here.
All right, quite a unique use case there that you brought up,
Is
Damu,
it
and thank
Damu?
you.
Is it
Yes,
Damu who asked the
yes.
question? Because I can reach out to him and I will do some research on it and I'll reach out to him if I find anything.
All right, so there we go, Damu. You have Deepthi will follow up with you here on your question. And hang on a second, here's a new note here. I know there is a Power BI gateway that connects to SSAS on premises. Yes, but that's a bit different dynamics here
Yeah,
than
that
the
is a
management part, right?
is it the on-prem data gateways that will be connecting um from
Correct.
your Azure? Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so the Power BI
Yeah, the Power
on
BI will be
premise.
connected to on-prem using that on-prem data gateway. And if you wanted to connect to the uh, Azure itself, Azure SQL database to your on-prem, there are the other express route and other services where you can use by using the express route to connect. But this is totally different, right? This is like pulling up your old your multi-cloud environment estate. Like if you are using different database engines, if you wanted to manage as a whole to think together as a one centralized location where you can check for the inventories and everything, then you can use this.
Exactly, right. A solution to simplify that management of all your,
Yeah.
let's say, server databases out there in the wild. I would say, like, what is the cloud, on premises, etc. Is that the case?
Yeah, and then you'll also be able to get the best practices assessment so that you can also do it in bulk on the multiple databases at the same time.
That is awesome, and a great tool for the DBAs out there who has multiple machines, dozens of machines, many times that they have to manage and handle
Mm-hmm.
in the environment. So that simplifies a lot.
Yes.
And I know that has been a challenge. Now you have it installed. How has it been your experience with the product?
Oh yeah, I mean this is just for the demo, right? I wanted to actually install SQL Server 2022 to use the advanced features that we have, the performance features, the IQP features that we have. So I have another session. So I wanted to download the SQL Server 2022 for that reason, but I also wanted to uh, but I also wanted to make a demo and like I wanted to show people how to install Azure Active Directory. I thought it is just a click. Basically, when I installed the SQL Server 2022, I thought like clicking on just by using the graphical user interface, right, while installing. I thought by clicking that I can enable, but then it failed. So I thought like, oh my God, now I have to do it manually. So I went through the steps and I had issues while doing it manually. So I thought like, I finally did it. So I thought like, why can't I put this thing together as a presentation?
Absolutely, great accomplishment there, and simplifies the journey to many
Yeah,
others that will come after, right?
yeah, and also I'm using that Azure Active Directory for my other demos. So I'm connecting to I'm using my Azure Active Directory account to connect to the on-prem server, and then I am doing my demos as well. So it's been very useful actually.
That's awesome. Really taking the product here, and challenging its usability, features, and enjoying the benefits of it, right? By what is designed for and how to overcome those challenges, identify
Mhm.
and overcome those challenges.
Right.
That's very good, Deepthi. Uh, any more tips for us?
Any more? I don't know what tips
So,
I can give you, but
well, we got to follow up then and stay tuned with your blog, right?
mhm,
DBA Nuggets
mhm.
dot
Common. I would like the audience to connect with me on LinkedIn as well. So if you're not already connected, it will be nice to connect with you. I'll be posting everything what I can, like the latest advancements and like features getting released on SQL Server or like Power BI, and like any new sessions that I'm giving in the coming months. I can share those details on the LinkedIn and Twitter.
Absolutely. So, folks, the links are in the description below the video, and you see the LinkedIn as well as the blog and all the social media. She's also in Twitter, so you also see Deepti's information in the description below. All right. Any final notes here, Deepti?
Mm, all the best for everyone. I mean, if you see Microsoft, we are seeing so many new features getting released day by day, and please don't be overwhelmed by looking at all of that and like feeling like, oh my God, do you have to learn everything? No, you just have to learn what you're doing, and if you're a database administrator, whatever is related to your DBA, that's what you have to learn. But like, do not get overwhelmed by looking at the other things like Power BI and like all the other co-pilot things that are happening. I mean, it's very beautiful to learn everything, but we are limited, right? We are limited human beings. uh, our minds are limited as well. We can learn as much as we can, like the max, but we will be maxed out at certain point in time. So
Absolutely. As you mentioned, there's so many other initiatives coming in, and it's really challenging to be, saying like it's literally the fire hose or multiple fire hoses. As you mentioned, we are talking about AI. We're talking about so many different things going on. So
yeah, and especially with the internet, right? Everybody have access to it. And previously, like a 60 to 70 years ago, like people only have the newspapers and a very limited TV or something, like if something is happening. But right now we have internet everywhere, and like we have too much content out there. Uh, too much things changing in the very less amount of time, and it is easy to get overwhelmed and stressed out. Um, I have been stressed out a couple of months ago, and I have been very quiet with the community stuff recently. But then I have to be back on track again.
I'm happy to have you back as well,
Mm.
and the focus, as you brought a topic that is directly and specific here to DBA and others, right? So primarily potentially DBAs, but other developers and other individuals who have this type of role, or checking, even architects like myself, want to have an idea what are the potential of different offerings out there. And as you said, there are so many things, and sessions such as this does help us to quickly understand, get a grasp of it, and have that high overview of it.
Right.
So thank you very much, definitely.
Thank you.
And Demu also is thanking you here. Great session, Deepti.
Thank
He's
you,
saying
everyone.
that. All right, folks. Uh, I do not see any other questions. All right,
Have a
folks.
great evening, everyone.
Absolutely. And well put there, Dipti. Have a great evening, everyone. Thank you, Dipti. Thank you, everyone that's watching now and or in the future. And stay with us here. And stay with us here. We will be coming up. Just remember, if you look in the description below, you see the meetup page as we have new presentations coming up. Right now, we have one for covering AI coming. We just did one last week, and we have another one coming August, along with other great presenters such as Deepthi. So stay tuned, RSVP to the upcoming events, and thank you all very much.
Thank you.
All right, have a good day, you all. Thank you.